Thank the chairman. Mr. Reichel Melnick, let me ask you a question. Is Joe Manchin, the senator from West Virginia, is he a racist?
I can't comment on that.
Okay, what about Mark Kelly from Arizona?
Similarly, cannot comment on that.
Maggie Hessen?
Also
Senator
cannot comment.
New Hampshire? Okay, can't comment on their being a racist or not. How about Senator Raphael Warnock from Georgia?
Similarly, I'm not familiar.
Okay, how about Catherine Cortez Masto from Nevada?
Likewise, Mr. Roy.
Okay, can't comment on whether they're racist or not.
I don't have an opinion as to the matter.
Okay, because you called me a racist. And you called me a racist because I said that Title 42 should be enforced. Something, by the way, that this administration did to the tune of over 1 million people.
Believe it's about 2.5 million people, actually.
Right. So this administration is racist?
I believe this administration has made a number of failures on the racial justice front.
So the Biden administration is racist?
I can't comment as the administration
Interesting.
in general.
Good to know. Good to know that the Biden administration is racist and get that on the record. The fact is, people who want to enforce Title 42 believe that there was a reason that Title 42 was put in place, but they also recognize that Title 42 is, in fact, a Band-Aid on a very broken system where the laws were not being enforced otherwise. But to throw around words like racist, let me ask you a question. Is my friend Henry Cuellar, is he a racist?
I can't comment on that.
Right, because Henry Cuellar said the border community is very concerned about Title 42 being lifted. This message of lifting Title 4 is going straight to the criminal organizations. He stood up and said that Title 42 should be enforced. The administration stood up. The senators I just listed said that Title 42 should have stayed in place. Now, my personal view is that Title 42 wasn't the thing that needed to stay in place, that what ought to be in place is an actual border security that secures the border. Mr. Wolf, in your position at the head of the Department of Homeland Security, notwithstanding what my colleagues want to throw around with the ad hominem attacks, you were, in fact, charged with securing the homeland, right? That was actually your task, yes. Securing the homeland at the Department of Homeland Security?
That's correct.
Right. And did you do that?
Yes.
Right. And is the current administration securing the homeland?
No.
No. In any measure, in any way, shape, or form, is the current Secretary of Homeland Security carrying out his duty faithfully under the Constitution to secure the homeland of the United States?
He is not. As I've outlined in my written testimony and oral testimony, there's numerous instances where he is not faithfully executing the law.
I thank you, Secretary Wolf. What I would say is, if you go back to April of 2022, in a Judiciary Committee hearing, I read word for word the statutory definition of operational control under the Secure Fence Act. I read it sitting right over here. There was a chart, and I put up the chart. I put up the text, and the text says, operational control means the prevention of all unlawful entries into the United States, including entries by terrorists, other unlawful aliens, instruments of terrorism, narcotics, and other contraband. I asked Secretary Mayorkas, do you have operational control? And his response was, I do. And Congressman, I think the Secretary of Homeland Security would have said the same thing in 2020 and 2019. In March of 2023, however, in a Senate hearing, Secretary Mayorkas said, quote, with respect to the definition of operational control, I do not use the definition that appears in the Secure Fence Act. And the Secure Fence Act provides statutorily that operational control is defined as preventing all unlawful entries in the United States. By that definition, no administration has ever had operational control. Just 2 weeks prior, United States Border Patrol Chief Raul Ortiz answered, no, sir, when asked by Homeland Security Chairman Mark Green, does DHS have operational control of the entire southwest border? So the United States Border Patrol Chief Raul Ortiz says, we do not have operational control of the border. He answered straight up, truthfully, no, sir. Why was it that the Secretary of Homeland Security, when I asked him that question, he said, yes, we have operational control. He said, I do, to be more precise. But then in the Senate, he comes back and says, oh, but no, I'm sorry. If you use that definition, you know, the one in the statute, no one has ever had operational control. What is your response to that? How would you characterize having operational control of the border, as you would say in the previous administration compared to current?
Well, I would certainly talk about my time in the Trump administration, and if I were to get asked that question, whether we had operational control, the answer was no, we did not. Neither was the border secure, and I think words matter here. Those are very definitive statements. I always talked about how we were making the border more secure, or it was the most secure in our lifetime. But to say that you have complete operational control, to say that the border is closed, to say that it is secure, you're hiding the ball from the American people. You're not being transparent. And it's for a purpose, I think you can only guess, a political purpose, but it also defies what the men and women of the Border Patrol and others are doing down there. When they see their political leadership make these sorts of statements, it's so bad it's hard to find words. They don't know what to think because they are on the line. They are on that border every single day watching the hundreds of thousands of individuals walk past them that they have to process. And they see that someone is saying that this border is secure. Or you see the 200 known or suspected terrorists that have come across this border in the last 2 years, but somehow that border is closed and secure. I don't understand it.
Yeah, kind of like accusing people of whipping migrants at the border. I yield back.
Time's up. Mr. Correa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Melnick, just the Secretary doing his job, Mr. Mayorkas. Before you answer that, let me just say that General Kelly, former Secretary of Homeland Security, heard him say a couple of times that border security does not end or begin at the border. And today, as you look at the world, it's pretty safe to say, post-COVID, economies around the world are devastated. The only real game in town is the United States. Our economy, world record low unemployment rate, shortage of workers, and even China, I must say, is struggling to get back on their feet economically. We have a worldwide refugee crisis. If you look at this chart behind me from the UN Refugee Agency, it shows the number of displaced people just in the Americas alone. You can see countries across the region struggling. It's not a U.S. problem, it's a regional problem. Mexico's dealing with this problem. Canada's dealing with this problem. Guatemala is feeling the effects, and of course, Europe. Further south, Colombia. If you look at this chart, Colombia is really struggling. And I must say, refugees are braving that trip north. Perilous situation. I want to show you the picture of a little girl struggling to continue north through the Darien Gap. This little girl lost her mother. And another refugee going north is trying to help her survive. If refugees are willing to do this, you can imagine the challenges at home. Now, let me say Title 42. We all talk about Title 42. I have to remind folks here, Title 42, the party in charge in Congress today, House of Representatives, voted to end the COVID-19 pandemic, and by operation of law, they lifted Title 42. Let me repeat, party in charge voted to lift Title 42. And let me say, I agree with them. Title 42 should not be an immigration tool, but a health issue. The administration has taken steps to prepare for Title 42's lifting. I was at the border numerous times before Title 42 was lifted. I would ask those officers in green and blue, are you ready? And they would tell me, we're as ready as can be. And it wasn't just CBP, it was DHS, State Department, and the administration who did a pretty good job in anticipation of the lifting of Title 42. And in fact, if you look at the next chart, these are the numbers reported publicly by Border Patrol Chief Raul Ortiz. 50% drop in the encounters after 42 was lifted. Unexpected. It's not over, folks. The world is still suffering from major economic challenges. And these numbers may be temporary. But the fact of the matter is, we've got to focus on getting economies around the world back on their feet. And we also have to focus on the other issue, which is immigration reform. Whether you like it or not, America is a massive draw, a big draw for workers from around the world. 50% of our farm workers are undocumented. Every time one of those undocumented goes to a farm, to a ranch, they find a job. We are also part of the problem, meaning we must pass immigration reform. Otherwise, we'll continue to be in the same situation. Mr. Melnick, I asked you earlier, is the secretary doing their job. We hear about operational control of the border. What does that mean?
Well, there's a colloquial definition of operational control, which I think is, and then there's a legal statutory definition under the Secure Fence Act of 2006. And as Mr. Wolf just noted, it's not anything that any administration has ever reached. And in fact, the way Congress wrote the statute, it is physically impossible for any administration to ever get operational control.
So when we ask, is there operational control at the border, the answer is there never has been operational control at the border.
Statutorily, no. There are obviously opinions that some people may have as to on their own views from a colloquial sense, but under the statutory definition, no administration has ever had it.
A political conclusion based on the times.
Again, I think it's the reality is that the job of DHS Secretary is extraordinarily complicated and difficult, especially today with more people arriving from countries further away. As you noted, with Colombia and other migrants coming, under the Trump administration, 3 out of every 4 migrants arriving came from 4 countries: Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador. Today, in fiscal year 2023, less than half came from those countries. And that is a hugely difficult challenge for any presidential administration, regardless of party.
Thank you, Mr.